Hello world, Cara St. Louis here. You may recognize the lady up there. That's Tere Joyce. She's a good friend of mine. We've been talking to each other for a couple of years. And I'm extremely, I want to say excited, but it's not really the right word. I'm gratified. I'm satisfied. I'm happy to have this particular conversation. One of the reasons, this is the cannabis conversation, and it's just a conversation. We're supposed to have Vinny Eastwood with us, and I hope he pops in soon, but you have to understand that we're also a bit global right now. I'm in London, Terry's in LA, Vinny's in Auckland, I think. And so the time differences can be a bit staggering. As we all know, Terry and I certainly know that. A couple times we've missed each other because I've just not figured the time thing properly.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens to all of us, and it is a big forgive, believe me. So if Vinny can't pop in, then I will talk to him separately and add it to the conversation because he does have a lot to say. He's a bit marginalized in this arena, this particular arena, but he's been doing, like we all are, but he's been doing really, really good work in New Zealand, and I want to hear what's going on down there. So this is Tere Joyce. Tere Joyce is down in LA, and I have to tell you, I pulled up her bio, which I have to pull up and read to you right now. I had to cherry pick from it, though, because it's extensive. It's extensive. So let me say to you what I know, what I've written down about Tere, and then if I leave anything out, she can help us out, because I do want you to know her before we get started. Okay, so let me see here. Tere Joyce was your typical American stand-up comedian. I wonder if that's true. I wonder if she stands out in some way.
I think I should rewrite that, actually.
You should rewrite that. You're not typical in any way.
I'm not telling the truth there.
What are you talking about? Okay, Tere Joyce was your typical American stand-up comedian whose goals, life, and career existed in the matrix of Hollywood. Then one day, she found herself staring at the barrel of a gun during a federal DEA raid in a California medical marijuana dispensary. We need to talk about how that happens.
Okay.
The experience was a catalyst for Joyce to examine her government, politics, media, cannabis legalization, and the 1%. After the raid, Tere experienced the beginning of her awakening and realized that her involvement with the cannabis plant was not an accident. She saw that the cannabis hemp plant had been suppressed and that its freedom, I love the way you put that, was directly connected to the life and health of the planet. Her creative awakening has inspired her to become an art activist, and she currently generates online media to foster awareness, not only to promote freedom for the cannabis plant, but for ourselves. She began to work with a nonprofit called Patient Advocacy Network. By the way, you can find all this on her site, and I recommend that you go over there because like I said, I just cherry picked it's an astonishing resume, which she currently serves as one of their board members. She has produced, hosted, and performed her stand-up comedy for fundraisers. She has volunteered for me a couple of times, even though it didn't quite get there, but thank you. For those who needed legal defense funds, i.e. growers and California medical marijuana dispensary operators who've been targeted and raided by the DEA, feds, local police, or IRS.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. She helped create the first medical marijuana float to be entered in the West Hollywood Gay Pride Parade. That must have been quite a day. The controversial float made the judges laugh and ended up winning the coveted Butterfly Award for the most colorful and original float. Tere co-hosted Cannabis Times Radio for 6 months before she branched off and began to host her own cannabis internet radio show, Hollywood Hemptress Hour. This may have changed. I'm not sure. She's going to update us on where she's actually landed these days. Anyway, Hollywood Hemptress Hour on newsdissidentradio.com. Hollywood Hemptress Hour currently airs on the Time 4 Hemp Network and iHeartRadio. In January of 2014, Tere launched the Freedom of Joyce show on Revolution Radio. At freedom.com. That's the one I've been on like 3 times, probably talking about the Fae, which is great. Joyce is best known for her stand-up comedy, having first traveled throughout the United States and Canada, performing in comedy clubs and pubs. In 2003, Tere Joyce was a top 10 finalist on NBC's Last Comic Standing. And also, that may be where you've seen her. She looks familiar to you. And also was a competing cast member on the 3rd season. She's written 3 screenplays in films that were AVN Award nominated and directed by filmmaker Erica McLean. Okay, it's extensive. This is what I've got so far.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've kind of been all over the place a little bit. Definitely. Yeah. And then, you know, what's interesting is to join this kind of media, you know, especially after having worked in, you know, Hollywood entertainment industry, and even the realization of, you know, how the media is manipulated and the disinformation, and, you know, and then you can lead that to the cannabis plant, because, you know, we wouldn't be without the plant if we hadn't had propaganda on it through William Randolph Hearst in the newspapers that made it illegal here in the United States anyways. Yeah. But what's interesting to see is how it became illegal all over the world. It wasn't just like, you know, the United States, you know, having an issue with it and having it taken away, but it's something that's been you know, illegal and removed from everyone, it seems like.
Right. Well, it's part of the war on Terra, Terra. I saw that the other day. Pepe Escobar used that, and I thought, oh, that's what it is. It's the war on Terra. Is it not?
Yeah.
Sorry, I digress.
Yeah, it's a war on Terra. It's a war on our planet. It's a war on us, because you know, we're designed to consume it. So, and I know you want to get into that, you know, also. So when you really realize, when you talk about the raid, you know, like how I woke up about the raid and all that kind of stuff, that was like my realization that something wasn't right. Yeah. Up until then, I was just, you know, I was asleep.
Right.
You know, well, pretty much, you know, until that, but it was like the series of events that came up that even led to it happening.
Yeah.
You know, I was actually in a doctor's office that was in the same building as a medical marijuana recommendation. I was doing a show about marijuana, so I was learning a lot of things that was happening about the laws, because I voted for it. You know, I voted for medical marijuana in California. We were the first state to legalize it in the United States.
Were you first?
Yeah, we were the very first. And so, you know, I thought, well, yeah, we have medical marijuana, there's no problem. So when I was in the raid, this was quite a few years later, and they had, you know, set it up so you have dispensaries where people could go in, and it's like a collective. I mean, you join it, and you know, they can grow so many plants per patient,
right?
And it's like you make a donation to the collective for them to grow you medicinal marijuana, and that's kind of like the program that it is. And they do that with like raw milk and different kinds of you know, items in the United States. So. Right. It's perfectly, you know, legal that way. Well, you know, then it become, you know, what it was is that even a dispensary could be setting up in the state guidelines that existed at that time. It would be perfectly fine, but because it's illegal on the federal level, it's never really legal. And that was the issue. So it was like the federal government was coming in and kind of just harassing these people, taking the medicine, you know, handcuffing you and going through this whole big deal. And the DOJ was being funded to do it. You know, so then you're thinking, well, you know, what is going on here? If we as people want this as a medicine, when we voted for it in our democracy, why are you like that? My thing was why do you have a gun in my face because of that?
Exactly.
And that changed me.
Oh, here comes
profoundly.
Vinny! Yay, Vinny! Okay, Tere. I told Tere before we started recording if Vinny popped in, and we were really hoping.
Right. Hi, Vinny.
That I would stop for a sec and make sure Vinny's bio's up. That I say something about that, so that everybody is well and truly incarnated into this here meeting. And then we'll let Tere keep going.
I mean, well, you know,
Tere,
you gotta stop me sometimes when I get started.
No, you know.
I mean, that's kind of like how it all happened, and I think that, and then you realize like why they're doing it and how it became illegal, and then how it affects, you know, so many different industries that are like, say for example, they kept going, well, we have climate change, we have global warming, let's do something about it. But we wouldn't have to cut down trees if we can make paper out of it.
That's
Or
right.
if we could be running our car on it. I mean, like it's
Right.
like a multi-purpose plant.
Right.
And we can't get access to it. I mean, that's when you realize if we're being lied to about that, then what else are we being lied to about is how I see it. And for me,
Exactly.
that peeling of the onion has led me into a whole different other path, because
Right.
you come up with that reality.
Right. I've always been, I'm giving a brief perspective from because we have so much to talk about, Tere. This is going to be a very full show, I think. My perspective was I would much rather see kids using marijuana than drinking, because alcohol is a deadly drug. Okay.
Yeah.
The powers that be see it the other way around. We're much easier to control through liquor than we are through marijuana. Hi, Vin. Listen, what I'm gonna do. I'm so glad you're here.
Okay.
Excited. Yeah. So we did start, and we did say, when Vinny pops in, we're gonna stop and give Vinny's bio, or at least the parts that I cherry picked. Your bio is just as extensive as Tere's in this area. So when we get to you, if you feel like you want to, and I hope you do, really just fill us in on your history with this, okay? Let me do your bio real quick, such as I have it, and say, this is Vinny Eastwood. Far out. That dates me, doesn't it? But I'm glad I'm really glad he's here, because he is what I would somebody that I would consider to be deeply involved in this issue, and through his experience and research, kind of an expert on the opposition to the push to contaminate this wonderful marijuana industry that the planet could be covered with cannabis again as it used to be, that kind of thing. So let me dig up your bio real quick here, Ben, and then you can tell me what else you want us to know. First of all, Vinny Eastwood has a wonderful show in Auckland. You need to tune into that, okay? Most people in America, whether he realizes it or not, do know who Vinny Eastwood is, okay? He is the #1 subscribed YouTube news channel with, this may have grown since you put this up. If so, say so. 28,000 plus subscribers. June 2016 is when he put this up. Outranking New Zealand's largest mainstream media channel, the New Zealand Herald TV. Well done, Benny. Get him, buddy. Syndicated throughout New Zealand on radio networks covering from Invercargill to Whangarei. Did I say that right, I wonder?
No, it's Whangarei.
Okay, thank you. A full-time self-motivated activist supported financially by ordinary people's generous donations, subscriptions, and Google ads on YouTube. Well done, man. That is not easy. The largest online video and audio archives of New Zealand activists in history, several thousand hours of published information, thousands of in-depth radio interviews, and created working relationships with some of the biggest and smallest names in the global conspiracy alternative media movement. That's what I just said. Everybody knows who Vinny is. The caretaker of a lot of very professional computers, sound equipment, green screen, microphones, various other gadgets that were all donated by generous listeners. You are my hero. I am a techno idiot. The inspiration for dozens of people around the world to start making their own media and follow their own destiny. Vinny, I'm going to read this next thing finally on an ironic note. Can I do that? Do you mind? Because I resonated with this so deeply, and I bet Tere will as well. Finally, on an ironic note, I have accepted in my mind that I'll likely fail in my mission to free humanity from scumbaggery. Scumbaggery in the Oxford English Dictionary soon, I'm sure. I use it all the time now. It's like I can't not use it. It's such a great word. So what I'll do is what makes me happy. Expose a little bit of scumbaggery each day, have a few laughs, make some awful puns. Yep. And help some decent people who the media won't touch get their voices heard till such time as God deems me unworthy of life, or the listeners deem me unworthy of support, which hopefully will be never. There was another bit, though. That was only part 1. Let me see if I can pull up the other one here. Part 1, I loved that one. And I loved, come on. I think this was probably 2007. He's got all kinds of good stuff. You need to go to his site and read this, whatever he doesn't tell us today. By late 2007, I was starting to go crazy. I'd watched hundreds of documentaries and was listening to conspiracy talk radio hosts at the same time as earning thousands doing something that didn't in any way stop the world being enslaved by bankers and the population being made subservient through propaganda to a criminal government. After going through 2 more sales jobs and just not liking the dishonest and psychopathic money-grubbing employers, or the idea of a meaningless life selling telecommunications, I took my final paycheck of $5,000 cash and $20,000 worth of shopping vouchers, quit my job, bought an iMac Handycam tripod, started filming protests, public meetings, interviewing activists, ambushing politicians, and putting the videos up on YouTube. It was the fact that there was no alternative media in New Zealand covering the things I was hearing on American outlets that really motivated me. I became a broke-ass activist. Oh, there's like 3 of us here. And with a sense of entitlement, trying to help everyone in the media ignored to have their voices heard for longer than 30 seconds. Talking to activists helped me realize how much information was missing from the news. And he was also looking after autistic boys part-time to pay the bills. I've done that before, Ben. Anyway, welcome, Vinny Eastwood. Now, you having heard that and having heard Tere's bio, now you know why they're here. Now you know why I have them on to talk about this subject. Now you know why they have my respect and the respect of so many. Okay, welcome, Vinny. So Tere was kind of in full fly. We're talking about California right now. And I had thought maybe we'd move, since we're in the United States with that, maybe we'd move to the confusion. Sorry, I'm going to try not to use that word. Confusion. The engineered confusion that goes from one state to the next, or the federal level to the local level.
Well, it's a big issue, because it's not only it has issues between state to state, but also city zoning, different counties. I mean, for example, I'm in Long Beach, California. There's no dispensaries here. They've decided to make it completely. We can't. There's none. I have to go to Wilmington to get to a dispensary. Yeah. Now they have delivery services. I can call somebody and have them come to my house and deliver it at the moment. But there was a big thing that they do, and yeah, so there's issues. And then you have the federal government issue, because it's not legal on the federal level. It's Class 1 drug, so technically they can override if they want to. They can come in and raid anything they want to, technically, because it's illegal. So there's an issue there. And there's a really big issue right now in the United States, especially with the fact that we have Jeff Sessions as our Attorney General, who's very anti-marijuana. Now, when Trump came into office, the
irony.
Yeah, the irony.
Sessions,
and Trump said, in the campaign, he says, I believe that it should be given up, should be up to the states to do it, right?
Right.
And then, so now Roger Stone, who is a Roger Stone, he's a big, do you know Roger Stone?
I don't know.
Okay, Roger Stone was very much behind Donald Trump's campaign. He's he worked for he created the first political research opposition with Paul Manafort and Stone. He was with Nixon, and he's made Reagan. He's made Reagan president. He's this notorious character that people hate right now. People hate him because, see, in the United States, we have this big racial thing happening. It's like Trump's a racist, and anybody who's been associated with Trump or got Trump into president gets into the whole the Russiagate Trump kind of thing. Now, Roger Stone worked with Alex Jones. He was part of Alex Jones's, so they were totally pro-Trump. Anyway, Roger Stone is a big marijuana supporter. There's a documentary about him called "Get Me Roger Stone." It's on Netflix. I think it's going to be nominated for Academy Award, because he goes all the way back to Watergate with Nixon. All right, I mean he's kind of this notorious character that's been he's been very much behind American politics, especially from the conservative side, even though he's a libertarian. Well, he's a big marijuana guy too. And there was big conflict in the marijuana community over him speaking at a particular event, because he's actually got the power to really influence Trump to take care of Jeff Sessions, because there's a very specific, it's called the Cole memo. And because of the raids, remember, like, I became an activist because I was in a raid, right?
Yeah.
Well, we signed an affidavit. We made a campaign on this. We wanted them to stop raiding us if we were following state guidelines. So under the Obama administration, Eric Holder was Attorney General then, and they brought this bill in, and everybody wanted it. It wasn't just a liberal or Democrat thing. The Democrats and the Republicans came together on this, and it went into place, and they stopped funding the Department of Justice, okay, to stop them for funding them to raid us. So they kind of pulled the plug on their funding, and so we got some sort of amnesty for a while. Well, it came back in 2011 that they wanted to retract it. We fought it again, but it happened again. Now with this administration, Roger Stone knew that they wanted to fund the Department of Justice, okay, the DOJ, to start raiding us again, even though we now have full-on legalization. Now we're at full-on legalization, and they want to start letting that money flow so they can come in and start raiding us again, which is absolutely just
right. I do know that's what's up. That's what's up for grabs right now. Now that we're kind of into this discussion, because it's a huge discussion and it's going to take some untangling.
Right.
First of all, I think it may take 2 shows. We may have to do a part 2.
Okay.
And second of all, then, if you need to, the nice thing about having hosts, having journalists talking to each other, is that if you jump in, it's generally not an interruption. It's a nice addition to the discussion. So maybe what would be nice right now, since we're kind of talking about the legalities and raids and things like that, is to get Vinny's story from down there. Vinny, do you want to talk about the politics down there right now, since that's kind of what we're talking about, and your personal experience with this?
Excuse me, I'm almost falling asleep, and
I know,
I have
it's
no idea
late
when
for
we're
you.
doing this tonight. So I've had no coffee, no water, and it's really, really hot. And I've got the studio lights on and stuff like that. And it's in the middle of the night. We've got a cyclone coming. So it's a bit.
You have a cyclone coming.
You have a cyclone coming?
What?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Vin, what we could do if you want to is do part 1 with Tere and part 2 with you, if it's easier.
Or you could just give me 5 minutes to go grab a coffee.
Do it. Go away. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. What? Okay, so let's talk about when he gets back, we'll do his stuff. He needs to eat.
In a nutshell, Roger Stone stepped in to do this, and it caused a big controversy, and a rift. Even the American politics are affecting people stepping in and stopping this and protecting it. So marijuana, it right now has this sort of, it's suffering from the left right opposition between one another, because we can't seem to be unified and come together and really take care of something. Because if Roger Stone could step in, he has the power of doing that with President Trump, then that will, and realizes that we do need to take it off of the federal government. See, there's certain Republicans that now are behind it. For example, Tyler Nixon, who is, Nixon's grandnephew, is also working with Roger Stone. So which I think it's rather provocative, because Nixon was the person who made it illegal, a class 1 drug in the first place. And to have his own grandnephew now be the part of the force to take it off of being, on the federal level is a real shift. And I think what people might perceive would be coming down from what they think a Republican is right now.
Right.
And so, with Roger Stone stepping in and being this figure that's actually, has represented very much the conservative presidents and has been a power force behind it and really got Donald Trump elected. Here in the United States, the mainstream media hate Donald Trump, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it. You've seen, the comedians holding up things that they shouldn't be holding. You know what I mean? It's like, right? I mean, it's gotten real nasty here, And what's interesting is we have this person who's very much a part of that shift, that upheaval in American politics against the president that they thought was going to win, which was Hillary Clinton. Okay. And when the Queen didn't get the prize, they didn't take it very well. I mean, just to kind of put it in that little bit of a nutshell. And in this, marijuana sits in it, in a very big way. And it's also going through, if we could open our minds and realize, like, look, we've all been duped. We're all been taken advantage of. The cannabis plant, you need it, I need it, everybody needs it, everybody loves it.
Everybody needs it. We need to talk about that,
mind control manipulation of separation that you think we actually really are. It's not really Trump, that's really the bad guy. The bad guys are the media and the machine and the deep state and the other crap that is so rampant in the United States.
Right.
That unfortunately the average American person is so duped in that, who goes to the polls and votes. They don't realize that every single initiative in the United States has been funded by George Soros.
That's right. And that we're going to say that name.
And they got their hand in the cookie jar. And then there's Monsanto around the corner, and there's control happening. We don't have freedom. We have them starting to control it, just like they're trying to control everything else that's going on in the world. And most people can't wake up to realize that that's actually what's really happening. Because the cannabis plant is directly against the New World Order agenda.
It is.
It's directly opposite. It is the
absolutely
thing that
foundational.
saves us from it.
It's foundational to, if they can't do something about that, and they're well on their way to managing it. A lot of people are doing really good research. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. Everything Tere says is absolutely true. But as with everything else, there's layers and layers and layers and layers that we're all peeling right now. And as it turns out, if you're watching this show, you're probably somebody that knows how valuable cannabis is to the human race anyway, right? In so many ways, materially. But the reason I'm interested in this right now as deeply as I am is because I'm getting involved in some research brought to my attention by Jeff Gates. Do you guys know Jeff? Tere, you might know Jeff. Anyway, he came to one of my lectures. He came to my lecture in Santa Rosa, which we also need to talk about because that's just south of the Emerald Triangle. And as you know, Tere, I was doing that lecture sort of free in the middle of the fire zone to try to get people down there to talk about this stuff. He came to that lecture, and part of my reverse engineering the trance lecture has to do with cannabis. Okay, and just the soil remediation alone of that plant makes it worth covering the planet in. And he brought to my attention a few things, including, which we will get into later, because I want you guys to be able to talk first.
Sure.
But including the serious research being done by Danny Arnold McKinney. You know her, Vinny, don't you? She's on Transpicuous News, I think is her show. Anyway, she's doing some serious research on the endocannabinoids. Don't do that. Okay, endocannabinoid system, which is far more important to us as human beings than you have any idea, I promise you. This system's not taught in med school. The system is buried, and we're going to talk about that later if we don't talk about it in a part 2 or something. But it's about.
I'm very interested in talking about that because I think that's what people need to understand. How we like our system. We basically we don't have a nutrient that our body's supposed to have right now in order to function properly.
That's right. We can't, and it makes us much easier to mind control.
Wow.
By not having those cannabinoids. That cannabinoid system is almost instantaneously remediable if you have the right, like CBD oil, things like that.
I suddenly I suddenly understand why a lot of the open-minded and awake and people that are accepting and kind of cool are people who smoke weed. A lot of the people who are really closed-minded and sort of assholes and sort of transfixed on particular things in life that don't have any value.
Right.
Are alcoholics.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Like
Vinny's had his coffee, guys. Look. Okay, Vinny, you're on. Tell us a little bit what's going on down there, what your personal relationship is. So we just have I want you to be sort of with us here on this.
I didn't come into truth and activism and stuff like that straight out of 9/11 was an inside job. I mean, you know, it was actually some Cannabis Party activists in Dunedin where I was going as a student, where I first, got exposed to this stuff and got given the book The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Cara, and then got busted. Somebody narked on me, and I was probably the naivest person these cops had ever seen. So I was just like, hey, here's my bags, here's my tin foil that I've rolled up everything in, here's all my weed, here's all my... And they're like, oh, okay, well, if you tell us the truth and give us a full confession, we'll go easy on you. So I go, oh, okay, I've been dealing for about 6 months. I've been selling about an ounce a week and that kind of thing for about $400. And then they go, oh, okay, sweet as, not a problem. And then they take me to jail, where they proceed to turn that into, I sold $40,000 worth of cannabis, as a student and stuff like that, and put that before the courts. So I went under the threat of 8 years of imprisonment for a first offence with no possibility of what we call in New Zealand diversion, where it's just your first one and it's not too harmful, whatever. We won't get a criminal record. So they just said no, that's not an option for you. This is way too serious. We found 13 grams of cannabis rolled up for sale. Okay, that's just way too serious. It's an indictable charge, up to 8 years in prison. So that was what was going through my head for a month, and now I've got complex post-traumatic stress disorder for the rest of my life, which is conveniently treatable with cannabis. So there's dodge that bullet. Now, so cannabis activism was where I kind of really came into the, cut my teeth on the whole truth issue, because as you go on from cannabis, you start to look at other things, and you realize that cannabis is not the only issue. But right. I joined a bunch of people called the Dactory. In New Zealand, we call weed DAC, and a dactory is a factory full of DAC. And it was the first cannabis cafe. We had at one point 21 strains available, huge warehouse. They had the lines going up the huge stairs and stuff like that to get the stuff. It was fabulous. And so naturally, as soon as the media found out about it and they posed with a big bud in front of the newspaper, they got raided. And also then the gang stood them over and stole all their stuff. It was just, it's a terrible thing to live in a black market when you're trying to do the right thing, essentially. You can't. That's the thing. Without either the approval of the authorities or the approval of the black market authorities, And it seemed to me from that point that cannabis was not the only issue, that there were much deeper things afoot here, that there's actually corruption that feeds into it, the medicine system feeds into it, industrialization of society feeds into it, the environment feeds into it. And it's interesting, really, because I know a lot of people who are big cannabis activists who think that I'm a crazy person because I talk about conspiracy stuff and what have you, which I was only open to because of the cannabis. Right.
It's the biggest conspiracy, one of the biggest conspiracies going on the planet. And the more I learn about it, the more I realize it is absolutely imperative that they knock this down, because they're not going to get us if they don't knock this down. This is that important to our biology. That's what I'm learning. In point of fact, my view is you cannot be anti-cannabis if you know anything. It's the moral, ethical, reasonable logical position to take,
Yeah, but people are not rational or logical. In fact, they're brainwashed cultists.
They are, absolutely.
Yes, they really are.
Yeah, that's why they
It's-
call it the American culture,
Yeah.
the New Zealand culture, because we're all part of our own little cults. And then all these cults believe that, no, cannabis is really dangerous, that it makes you really stupid. So what if every president smoked it? So what if most of the geniuses throughout history have used it? I don't use it, and I'm really smart. No, you're not. I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
Just not that bright, son. Just adults are talking. Adults are talking. Just
Scene.
this is what you want to do to these people.
Okay, Vinny, I know that you've been working on have you been working on the legalization down there? Am I right about that?
Oh boy, have I been working on the legalization of cannabis in New Zealand? Yeah, I was the campaign manager, more or less, for the legalized cannabis party this most recent election, where we went from a very, very anti-cannabis, government to a yes, absolutely yes, kind of on cannabis sort of government. And so naturally, as soon as they got everybody's votes, they go, nah. Right, so basically this is what happens around big news headlines around the world. Medical cannabis now available in New Zealand. What does that actually mean in reality? It means you have to be within 12 months of death, diagnosed by your doctor. And your doctor has to somehow source by himself some international producer of cannabis extracts only that are prohibitively expensive, produced by pharmaceutical companies. So if you can afford it, and you can find a doctor who's doing it, and you're dying, you're in the money, son. And you won't be able to get this organized stuff anyway. You're just like, these were a big campaign promises, but I'm just over the moon. It's progress. No, it's not progress. It's called dicking you around. Okay?
Right.
And they will do so for as long as humanly possible. Okay?
They will.
All the time. Okay, it's just like, here's your voting block, and the motion goes like this, and again, and again, and again. And it's a marijuana masturbation of legislation. It's just horrific.
It's here. It's same thing here. Same thing here.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all following the same script, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't even talk about it. I'm sitting in London, I can promise you, they don't even broach the subject here. It has no relevance. It doesn't exist here. You could go to Germany and have a conversation about medical marijuana. They're very open to that, generally speaking, but that's, it's just not the same thing. They don't seem quite as rabidly sort of concerned about the issue over here as they should be, which is fine. I mean, we have our hands full in Oceania, and we also have our hands full in the United States. Canada's getting ready to weigh in some freaking way. I have no idea. But now that
the same thing as everywhere else, little, too little, too little, too late.
Too little, too late, because.
And what's interesting is that the legislators don't seem to grasp this one thing. And, it's something you learn early on as a human being, is that other human beings and other human life matters. And people can go through these things called pain and suffering, and they can suffer from it on a consistent basis, on a daily basis, forever, right?
Right.
And they don't have that connection between them saying no to cannabis and them actually then inherently becoming the cause of everybody's pain. Now, if people started to have that little penny drop, I'm anti-cannabis, that means old auntie, whatever the fuck, can't drink her tea without spilling it all over herself because her Parkinson's is so out of control. Okay, that is now your fault, Mr. Legislator. You practically gave her the poison pill that caused her Parkinson's. All right, it was probably Coke Zero, but we're going to blame you anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Allowing the thing that can stop her pain to be available.
And now that Vinny's brought up kind of the medical aspects, we can touch on that briefly. Like I said, I have a feeling this is going to be more than one interview, which is fantastic because I really like to get in depth. But the thing is, some of the research that's going on right now, first of all, what Jeff Gates brought to me in the middle of my lecture in California, which was really fantastic, is that there is some concern right now, some serious evidence that about 95% of the weed that's being sold right now is GMO already.
Really?
Yeah, and that people should be saving seeds. I don't care if you smoke pot or not. You should be saving seeds. You know what I mean? Just save them, save them, save them, save them. Vinny?
There's a moth.
Yeah,
Okay.
I read an article that really went into they were really all the companies were lined up already to
Yeah.
start
Well,
to
that's
start
the thing.
taking
I mean,
control of the seeds.
if you
Seeds
are,
are a
if
big
you've been
deal.
alive on this planet for very long at all, you know how this rolls. You know how Monsanto rolls, and Monsanto is like running for its life a little bit right now because of corn and soy and all that other stuff, right? They've abandoned ship and gone to Germany, and they're forcing Bayer to buy them. I'm sure that's what that's about. They're just hiding out behind
Right.
Bayer right now. They need another cash crop, gang. They need another cash crop. And we've all said for years, all of us, well, yeah, okay, until Monsanto gets a hold of a patent, then what's going to happen? But the reality, okay, I'm not going to say the reality because it wasn't there, but I'm going to say the evidence suggests via the research that Danny Arnold McKinney and other people are doing who have a lot of gravitas is that in fact, Monsanto rolled out a program in Uruguay. Did you know about this?
Yes.
Years ago, to test. They always pick a country. Usually it's Germany. Social engineering, it's always Germany, but in this case, it was Uruguay in South America to find out how this would roll, and got a hold of the situation, figured out how to make most of it GMO, how it was going to look, how it was going to work. Then they opened it up in California, which actually I had thought Colorado was the first one, but that's, sort of neither.
We had medical. Colorado was the first one to do recreational.
I see. Okay.
Recreational, and Washington legalized it for recreational at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then Colorado was the first one to actually really implement the law.
Right.
Washington didn't really implement their start date was later. So they are the first recreational. And Colorado is far, I think, maybe more advanced in terms of taking it seriously. They have more clinics, more medicinal. They've done more research. California is a little more greedy. I'm just going to say it. California has been more. I mean, even though they go, oh, we're medical, and we are, but I think it's different here. It is about the money too.
Well, can I actually comment on that just for a second, Tere? Because an article came out recently saying that a lot of people who are using cannabis for allegedly, recreational use are actually doing it because they have an undiagnosed health condition that the cannabis helps.
Right? I agree with that.
All cannabis use is medical use.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have, of course, the lightweights who freak out and do stupid things and stuff like that when they smoke a joint and what have you. But there's an easy fix to that too. Just keep smoking weed. You'll learn how to handle it,
Right,
It's just like after you try beer for the first time. Man, this tastes awful. Just have another one, mate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with you on that. But, I mean, there's different... It seems that there are other parts of the country that have more information about epilepsy and all kinds of things. And I don't really see in LA, okay, I don't really see all of that being implemented. It's sometimes you go in, it's very hip hop. It is as if you're going in to your bud tender, but they're called bud tenders. So you're like, you're not going, oh, could you, I have arthritis. Could you show me a chart of like which CBD oil would be in the cannabinoid system? They don't know. It's like they have the pretty girl behind the bar. It's become, and that's supposed to be medical. That was medical. See,
yeah.
and I just think that, if we're going to make it medicine, that make it medicine so that people can learn how to administer the different aspects of what they're taking, because you have certain elements, you need different kind of things. And some people want to have CBDs only. They don't want to have the psychotropic aspects. I mean, it even comes down to, like the RSO oil, the oil that kills cancer cells, the thick oil, they can make it one-to-one, CBD to THC. and that will make it so that they don't get as high, but it's still maybe potent enough to do the killing of the cancer cells. And there's all these kind of different things that are available out there, but I don't see a whole lot of, most of the dispensaries that are there are not really they don't seem to be available to the real serious person who's looking to heal themselves in specific ways. You have to take the initiative and then go in there and then figure it out where it's at. You can't come in there not having the knowledge by your
right.
There's no authority blessing it, kind of thing, no Surgeon General's label on it saying this is the shit.
Right.
I think Colorado's better at that though than we are.
They are, but there was a news article recently stating that growers in Colorado are going to be required to apply a certain chemical to all their plants so that they can be trackable. The plants can be trackable, where they came from, where they go to. What is this chemical? I don't know. And it's about tracking it for lots of reasons. Ostensibly, it's about taxation and, where it's going one way or the other, what it's going to, that kind of thing, which means it's being that much more highly regulated. But there are all kinds of other reasons to apply an outside chemical.
I want to touch on the high regulation factor here, because in New Zealand it's legal to grow hemp, but it's so highly restricted that it may as well be illegal. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, and what Tere was saying there about the professional medical kind of thing, we've got this guy called Tige Stopford here in New Zealand from the New Zealand Hemp Foundation. Now, what he's trying to do, like last time I heard, is he's trying to raise like $20,000 or $40,000 or something like that to get into a medical conference and have a little table there, right? Just like that's the minimum you can buy. This is where all the doctors and all the big medical personnel and what have you are pushing their wares on the medical community. And he figured that out. So he said, okay, we'll Kickstarter it. And then I'll go in and I'll talk directly to the MDs and talk directly to all the people who are selling these enormous amounts of medical equipment and stuff like that and say, hey, no, actually, have you heard about the endocannabinoid system? They're like, yeah. Did you know that there's more than one type of cannabinoid? Yeah. Did you know we've only discovered like 20 of them that we're researching and there's actually like 400 of them?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So here's the thing. We don't know what we don't know about cannabis. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. You can roll a joint, you can smoke it, and then it's still not finished, and you can put it in a cone and then smoke the rest of it, and then you can scrape the cone and smoke the resin again. All right, it's a gift that just keeps on giving, ladies and gentlemen. It just won't stop. Now, the thing about this is, though, when you're dealing with something that is that useful that many times in a row, you're dealing with this thing called competition in the marketplace. Now, let's say you've got really crappy cotton or something like that, or you need to wait really long times for trees to grow so you can cut them down to make your paper and so on. And they got these guys over here using this magical plant that's doing it like way faster and way cheaper and way stronger and way more efficiently and like with way less environmental damage. And that's just not fair. Let's make it illegal. And that's what happened.
That's what happened. Absolutely. That's what
happened. Illegal.
It's so unreasonable.
Well, those people are in charge. All the people who own the forests, all the people who make all the infrastructure, all the people who make all the drugs and the chemicals and supply the alcohol, all of these people whose wallets are about to get light as soon as they have some extra, what now? Competition.
Right.
And it's ironic, right-wingers going on over this, oh, no, I don't like cannabis, it sends the wrong message. What? Competition spreads the wrong message?
Well, yeah.
I think this too. Yeah, I think it's part of the I mean, let's just go there. The agenda for genocide. Take away a plant that's gonna keep us healthier and make us not dependent on using the other drugs that are toxic and everything. You know what I'm saying? I'm preaching to the choir, but I really think that it's like, no, we're not going to allow you to be able to be healthy because you're on your way out, man.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was thinking about. Somebody knows about the endocannabinoid system. I'm going to say probably somebody who was associated with some Rockefellers, maybe a while back with the the pharma industry, and when they captured the medical industry and started mind controlling the doctors by making them go through the kind of training that they go through, so that they become their own.
That actually happened in the late 1880s.
Yeah.
Rockefeller Standard Oil bought out most of the major medical journals and things like that. And they did this thing called the Flexner Report, where they sent this guy named Flexner around to all the medical kind of schools, all the homeopaths, the naturopaths, the whatever-opaths, the sociopaths. And they gave him a little rank, like a little star rating, as to say, oh, this is a very good medical practice, and oh, this is not a very good medical practice. And incidentally, he gave these really high good ratings to the medical schools that practice Rockefeller medicine, which is give a drug. It's a chemical imbalance, give a drug.
Right.
And all of these other disciplines, from chiropractic and homeopathy and naturopathy, no, let's just give them really low rankings. And they're like witch doctors, mate. I mean, the body doesn't have a channel of energy running through it, or something that necessitates spine alignment. This is just crazy. And so naturally, all of the competition in the medical industry went away, and Rockefeller's now own the entire medical industry. And most of those drugs that they were putting out, they got from waste products from the oil operations, because when the oil comes up, that good stuff that you want comes with a whole lot of bad stuff that you don't want, and it's really expensive stuff to get rid of. But it's not so expensive to get rid of if you put it in drugs and give it to people and tell them it's good for them.
Sad, no? I mean,
in fact, it's profitable.
Horrific. Well, but this is the thing. And also, Tere, you're talking about, I think Vinny's right. It's all medicine.
Yes.
But it might be a better thing to see it as a nutrient. Of course, then you run into the FDA.
Well,
but
it is a nutrient. I mean, you can actually, and you can even eat it, and it's an oil, and you can put it in your salad.
Absolutely.
I mean, omega-6s, and it's definitely, it's just this multi-purpose plant. We need to have more people having dialogue about the other uses of it. I find that really in politics, it's still very much treated as if it's like, oh, it's a joke or it's a drug. We're still very much into the recreational aspect, even though it's medical. But it's, and I get even annoyed when I see politicians say, oh yeah, I smoked it when I was 70s, and they make a joke about it. It's like, no, why don't you stand up and actually really say what it really is and what it can really do for the entire, that it is paper, a fiber, it's a fuel, it's plastic, it's really everything. It
is everything.
Right. And they just act like it's, when it comes to the legality of it, they treated it as if it should be with alcohol, tobacco, and arms, when it really never belongs there anyways,
Well, that's because when Prohibition ended, the DEA didn't have anything to do. All of a sudden, they were out of a job. So, I mean, there's so many reasons that cannabis was demonized. That's one of them.
Well, actually, the main reason cannabis was demonized in the first place was during alcohol prohibition, because Henry Ford was actually using ethanol made from hemp to fuel his Model T cars, and that started to compete with Rockefeller oil.
Yeah.
So they banned alcohol, including ethanol.
Yeah, see, that name keeps coming up, doesn't it?
Okay, and then that didn't work because it destroyed society, and then they go again, and they say, oh, now cannabis is illegal and that kind of thing, and it destroyed society, and so we're going to just keep going and keep going. It's a scam. Right. The scammer never drops the con. They will always say it's bad, it's a drug. They will ridicule it. They will appeal to authority. Doctors say it's bad for you. They'll do all and any tricks in the book in order to keep the scam running, because their livelihoods literally depend upon it.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter to them per se that the lives of other people don't matter to them. That's what's going on here. Is there are those who care about human life, and there are those who don't. And the people who don't care about human life, the amount of energy that it takes to care about human life has now been diverted to commit scumbaggery and destroy society. All right?
Right.
So callous, uneducated, negligent, tyrannical sociopath. Well, cunts for short. Now, these cunts have seized control of society.
Okay. I have a new word. We have a new word, Jerry. Cool.
Well, you know what? It sounds more pleasant when it comes with his accent.
It so does, actually. I'm not
The
sure
American accent says that word. It's much more harsh. I wasn't even sure you even said it. I go, did he just say what I thought he said? Wait, right on.
And by the way, while we're talking about names, I'm just going to shove this in because we need to bookmark it. Guess who underwrote the effort in Uruguay to figure out how to control the marijuana industry?
Rockefellers?
Nope. George Soros.
Yeah, George Soros. Yeah, and like I said before, he's funded every single initiative we've passed here in the United States. He's behind everything. He's like Rumpelstiltskin. It's like I keep telling people, I go, he wants something. Okay, he didn't just give us money for no reason, but they're just blind to it. They're like,
seriously,
what are you talking? They don't know. They don't.
I don't know anybody. Do you guys know people who think Soros is a good guy? Because I don't know.
There are people. I've had people telling me, they go, well, Terry, just maybe he's not. He's one of those nice, good, rich people. I'm like, no, he's not. He's not that.
Oh God. Okay, I'm so glad I don't. Well, I probably will.
There are a lot. Or they want to deny it, or they're just blowing smoke in my face. It's like, do you really think I don't really like? Yeah. How do you?
Okay. See, the problem with being intelligent, Terry, is that you can't understand how stupid people can be because you're not that stupid. So
maybe it's that. I thought this guy was really smart, though. I really did.
I understand. That's the confusing part.
Right. He's like, are you putting me on?
Oh yeah, you guys. This is a total sidebar. I don't want to get too off track at all, but I had this experience when I was coming back from Northern California. I'm sitting in the San Francisco airport, and this really, really ancient fellow with a young man. They're headed for New Zealand, actually, on this flight. And they're sitting where I was sitting to get on a plane. And he must have been a professor at Berkeley. And he was sitting there regaling this young guy with the bullshit story of 9/11. From stem to stern, it was the original story. And I was just sitting there going, oh my God, am I really hearing this? And this guy's a professor at Berkeley. So anyway, okay. So Vinny, what happens in New Zealand because I'm going to head up to Northern California pretty soon in this conversation. What happens in New Zealand? People are growing illegally, I suppose, right now. It's still nebulous, in my mind, whether it's illegal or legal, and it's probably totally not legal. So people are growing out in the woods, are they? Out in
yes.
There's bush growing, there's indoor growing, there's all sorts of things. The penalties for these things are not light at all, unfortunately, though. If you're caught selling or if you're caught growing, you can face jail time straight up. A lot of times now when people are being caught with it, they're just being discharged with a conviction. Sometimes if it's their very first time, it's very illegal, and they don't treat you with a whole lot of respect, and it becomes very expensive if you try to fight it. And essentially, the facts of the matter are we spend more per capita on the cannabis drug war than any other nation in the world. We arrest more people per capita than any other nation in the world. We're a nation of 4 million people. So then when you do the math, we're spending more and incarcerating more and busting people more than anywhere else. And we're also the second highest on average users of cannabis, number one being Jamaica. Incidentally, we're the second highest appreciators of reggae music, again, number one being Jamaica. So there's a connection between cannabis and reggae. There is a
connection, and there are connections to draw. They are subjective, I suppose, but I'm thinking about New Zealand. I'm thinking about the United States. I'm thinking about renegade personalities. I'm thinking about cultures where the individual is pretty sovereign and how important it is to beat them back down. So, when my immediate question was, why New Zealand? Well, I know a lot of Kiwis in England, and it's really about it's a real sovereign culture. It's a real individualist culture, is it not?
I don't
Do you
know.
mind if I think I might have heard a little meow. And
Oh, go see if Kitty's home,
Let
please.
me just see for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay, so
I had this discussion online one time because when it comes to explaining New Zealand to somebody who perhaps hasn't been here and has just seen New Zealand as on a thing and how it comes to in terms of understanding our culture, imagine you come to a culture where most people just basically watch the mainstream media, listen to the mainstream news. Most of them believe it, and those who don't become apathetic and don't really stand up for what's right in society. And the vast majority of the time, people just try and waste their time getting drunk, doing drugs, watching sport, and watching movies and TV until eventually they get older and then start taking psychotropic drugs and then shoot up the place. You know, like basically, that's New Zealand in a nutshell. And
I thought that was the U.S.
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
You've got chemtrails over there, we got chemtrails. You got fluoride, we got fluoride. You got a brainwashing media over there, we got a brainwashing media. You got an intelligence service that's attached to that media that's actually telling it what to say specifically. So have you got a corrupt police force that doesn't allow any Freemasons to go to jail no matter how many people they rape, kill, or beat, or something like that? We got that too.
Right.
Okay. Let me just break that down even further. The terrible realization is that there's nowhere to escape to. There's no free land, you know? And that was the sad thing, you know, for me as a New Zealander, listening to Alex Jones and things like that and thinking all the corruption's over there. But you realize if you just kick over a few rocks in New Zealand, you're going to find some scumbaggery very, very quickly. Kind of vicious scumbaggery too, like the kind of stuff. Not only would you not expect it here, you wouldn't expect that kind of stuff anywhere. Like we got a, what was the name? Paul Marianne Heinrich, interviewed him one time, got bound with rope, hands and legs, naked, in a police cells for an entire weekend without food or water or toilet breaks, right?
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
that's the police station just down the road from me.
Oh, Vinny.
You know, this kind of stuff goes on, and people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. They'd rather just keep drinking, watching the sport, listening to the news, and hoping that every now and again they can vote for somebody to release the pressure valve, you know, and just go like, oh, let's just make it a little less oppressive, you know, so we can survive through to the next election cycle.
Right.
But it doesn't work. So nobody's in a different boat. You know, when people say we're in one world, one planet, and such and blah, 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 oftentimes they're promoting globalism. But I'm saying it on a different perspective is that we're all ants under the same boot right now. And
yeah, it's good to think of it that way. It really is good to think of it that way. The only differences I found in my traveling around, Vinny, is that they try to keep each continent kind of in its own separate cotton wrap so that no one knows what's going on in the other continent. You know, nobody knows.
The Australian comedian Steve Hughes said this best. He said that the tourism agency for Australia should actually swap jobs with the news, right? So that whenever people are being told about Australia from the tourism agency, they'll be telling you about the grog war zones that they've got. They'll be telling you about all the amount of trash. They'll be telling you about the huge amount of speeding fines and things like that. But if when you turn on the news in Australia, they'll be saying, nah, mate, we'll just have some white wine, dance with the avos, go down to Uluru, and it'll be sweet as, mate. Like, everybody wouldn't want to leave. Everybody would love their own country at that point if the tourism industry was the people giving you the news.
Right.
And I see now videos that are advertising New Zealand, you know, because it's summer here, good tourist season, what have you. And you see these beautiful vistas. You know, it's my country. I know what it looks like. I've been there. I've done that. And what's problematic, though, is that the streams that are inside these beautiful pictures and things like that are loaded with cow poo. They're loaded with monofluoroacetate, compound 1080, the kind of stuff that if you eat it, it'll make you, if you're a deer, for example, have spasms so bad that you might break your own back or spew your own stomach lining out of your mouth. This is the kind of stuff that we dump $50 million worth of every year into our pristine lakes, rivers, streams, and bush, right?
Okay.
To kill possums. use, right? And these kind of things aren't widely known to not
No.
only the general public of New Zealand, but the world in general. And when it comes back to the cannabis issue here, we've got a really, really strong group of cannabis activists here in New Zealand who've been battling. I've seen them battling for a decade of my life, but they've been battling for a decade plus, more or less. And we're talking about people who are tired. They're getting run down. They're getting sick of getting
Yes.
run around.
Yeah.
And they have a longevity to them that I think is only possible because of the amount of cannabis that they use. Now, it was interesting, the political situation here in New Zealand, because cannabis, for the very first time ever in New Zealand political history, actually became a hot topic political issue. Like it was a campaign issue, and we were campaigning, I think, against maybe 4 other parties out of maybe 6 or 7 that really stood a chance of getting in there, that had these big cannabis policy announcements and things like that. All of which, mind you, apart from the legalized cannabis party, were those kind of gently, we don't want to upset the general public by our cannabis policy. We want to do it like watered down and watered down and watered down and watered down. And eventually you get no change. And however, in 2020, there is going to be a referendum, which means they're going to ask the public, hey, do you want cannabis legal? Now, every single time there's ever been a major poll in New Zealand, it's 80% plus saying, yeah, we need it legal. And so naturally, every single time the politicians vote on it, it's 80% nah. Just nah.
Well, what I'm thinking,
the public consciousness gets reflected through the people they elect to represent them.
my view right now, though, guys, based on some of this other research I've been reading recently, is that they're running a game on us as well through the legalization stuff from the top tier down, because of the work that George Soros has done, because of being able to get Monsanto involved, which we all knew was inevitable. But I being this blue-eyed whatever I always am, thought, oh no, we've got to keep Monsanto out, not thinking that, well, Jesus, they're way ahead of us. You know, they've been working on this for a long time. So, but it's in our best interest to play the game with them, to play the legalization game that they're playing. And there is a guerrilla movement already afoot to save seeds and to maintain an authentic strain. But one has to realize, despite the fact that if you're somebody who's in chronic pain or has a severe anxiety disorder or all of these things that cannabis can really, really help, you're probably going to have to get your medicine through a dispensary that's controlled by Big Pharma. You may go there first, but understand that that's not the real deal. Hopefully it helps you anyway. But what they're working on is taking every medicinal quality, every nutrient quality out of this plant, covering it with whatever they need to cover it with so that they can track it and tax it. Welcome to the world we live in, really. I mean, this is the same old story, right? But there is a guerrilla movement to save seeds and maintain the authentic strain, which that's probably what will become illegal in some way. But right now, it seems to me that it's the best thing to do to play their legalization game, so that at least we get some sort of public acceptance, public, integration of the idea.
Well, it's like we agreed to it, but most people don't read the fine print of what they're actually really voting on. What passed here in California is awful. We voted an awful law in. There were other laws that were on the ballot that would have been better than the one that we got this year. We had Sean Parker, who used to be the president of Facebook, put a bunch of his money in it. Gavin Newsom actually wrote a bill here in California that's absolutely awful. you know, we're in bad shape here. I think that we've gone backwards with marijuana, and but yet everybody celebrated we finally had it implemented this year. I mean, in January, it finally came into where it was legal. They opened up shop for people to go and buy it, and for, like, let's say, you know, $150 overpriced anyways. They may have gotten like a half an ounce, and they paid $52 in taxes, and they're all doing a backflip over that, and they don't know how screwed we are. And here's something else: in the state of Oregon, when they got their legalization, they brought in the Clean Air Use Act, which affected people for smoking in public places that were private public places like smoke shops or whatever. So now they can't even congregate and smoke in an inside building where smoking is. So they you know, and it was for tobacco, but on the back end they got marijuana. So the famous Cannabis Cafe had to close down. Same thing is about to happen here. I mean, I was hearing on the radio, do you want to make it so that there's no tobacco smoking in apartment buildings? Well, you know, guess what? Probably pretty soon we're not going to be able to sit and take, you know, smoke our joints or do a bong hit in our own home, in the privacy of our home anymore.
Okay.
Yay for legalization.
That's right.
And we signed up for it, but we don't realize what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And how it should.
I'd like to actually recite something for you. It's actually apart from a script of mine. So they bust down the door. Food police, have you got a permit for that turnip? Is it certified, modified? You know, it's just
Yeah.
to the point where everything's so regulated and so jacked that kind of thing. You won't be able to do anything in your own home, you know.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the scenario in Northern California, though, real quick, guys, because that was important. It was important because it really started me on a path that it's just important, period. What I discovered over here when I heard that Santa Rosa was on fire, and because I have lots of friends over there, because I go there in the winters to lecture and do workshops in Petaluma, which is just south of Santa Rosa. Okay, so Santa Rosa's on fire, and you know, all my friends are talking about evacuation, so this is how I'm knowing about it. And I'm looking at the property that's on fire, realizing that the entire Emerald Triangle is on fire, right? So now I got to know what the Emerald Triangle is, you know. And I'm researching, and what happens, what I find out, at least on face value, Terry, is that Governor Brown has just given the growers in those counties in the Emerald Triangle the right to use appellations as a vintner would use, which moves those crops into an artisanal, elevated standing, right? And I think at that time recreational use was on the books, but I can't remember how that,
Well, it came in, we voted it in 2016. It was with this past election. Mm-hmm. And then they really they didn't make it a really legal until a year later, you know, and so we had all this preparation.
Right.
That whole Emerald Triangle area has been providing, you know, it's been the mom and pop. There's been a lot of people, just regular people growing up there. Okay. Yeah. Some of it's legal, some of it's not legal. I'm just going to say that right now. Cause, you know, it's, some of it's legal, some of it's not legal. All right. Okay. So, but whatever. All right. And so, but some of the illegal has gone into the dispensaries. There's been a gray line, you know, a fine line between legalities, to be honest with you, that's kind of even most traceable. And also in that area, it's really the people who live there. Like there's shops in Arcata that the drug money has been laundered through there, you know, and that's why, because their business is not that great, but they have their little cozy little town. Their whole town's funded by marijuana, and everybody's been okay with it, and the law enforcement's been okay with it for a really long time. But this legalization coming in is going to take that away. You would think that they would be ready to implement and really explode into what they thought they were waiting for it to be legal the way they envisioned it. Now they're realizing that it's being taken over by the corporations.
Okay, my question though, Terry, consider this. That was the giant Jesuit Jerry Brown.
Right.
Okay. Governor of California. who, champion of mandated vaccines and all of that.
Right. He wants to be president.
Giving this huge, leg up to the growers in the the Emerald Triangle, by allowing them to equate themselves with the vintners up there.
Well, it's not so much Jerry Brown's doing as it is Gavin Newsom, who's now going to be running for governor, or wants to be governor. He's also funded by the Getty family as well, Gordon Getty, and they're all intertwined. So you see where this is going.
Well, yeah,
he got involved in marijuana up in San Francisco. I think he was the mayor of San Francisco at one point. It was a big, he also has a vineyard. He's been in the wine.
Where's
Tere, I think you might have muted yourself accidentally, Tere.
Tere, darling.
Tere, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, babe.
No. Might have to reconnect that. Nope, still can't hear you.
3 hosts. This is great. Listen, when I was doing this lecture in Northern California, it was great because I had Emily Moyer and I had Jeff Gates in the audience. And when they interject something, it only helps, man. It only moves the lecture along. You know what I mean? So
am I back?
You're back. There you go, darling. Start the rant all over.
There's something key. I just want to
Just
make.
before you continue, Tere.
Before
you continue, I just want to throw one thing in there.
Uh-huh.
A little conspiracy theory popped into my head. What if somebody set the Emerald Triangle like on fire deliberately?
I know.
We'll wipe out their competition, so that when the new corporate marijuana comes in, there aren't any local growers.
I was thinking that too.
That was my first thought.
Why not?
When I heard that was part of what burned down, that's all I could think about. Oh my God!
All I could think about was going outside and going.
Yeah, so it's a lot going on
right now. The highway, get out of the car, man.
Yeah. In Northern California, you got directed energy weapons, you got Agenda 21, and you have the Triangle. There was a lot to talk about. And that's when I found out that there was this big guerrilla movement to save seeds, because so much of it's already GMO, and we don't know that because we're so freaking hopeful that we'll just get legalization and normalization under our belts, which isn't even.
I think cynicism is the mark of a journalist. Right, so the journalists are people who ask the who, what, when, where, why, and the how. And if those people are cynical, that means being cynical is actually the accurate way to look at things. Think about how much time you will save, ladies and gentlemen, if you are cynical when the news says something, if you are cynical when a politician promises something, if you're cynical when a new product comes out that's not going to get you fat. All right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was that meme that was going around? It says sugar-free, fat-free, think chemical shitstorm. I love that one. Anyway, so Northern California is definitely worth examining. It's definitely worth examining, and one wonders what, those poor growers up there, they're always, on a wing and a prayer. They're never insured. They cannot rebuild. The local governments are making it so, especially in Santa Rosa, so that they're making it very, very difficult to rebuild, even for the people who had homes there. This is a stack and pack agenda. They don't want anybody, mostly though, what we need to start talking about, in my view, is the endocannabinoid system, because people don't know it exists. And that is how they're making us sick.
This brings me back to one thing that I wanted to do earlier, but I forgot to say. This is how a cannabinoid works, ladies and gentlemen. All right, it's floating along in your bloodstream or whatever. You've smoked it, you've eaten it or something. Every single one of your cells from birth, every one, whether it's in your eyes, your dick, it's got a cannabinoid receptor. All right, so what happens is that cannabinoid's flowing through your system, and the receptor will latch out at it like a little anemone. All right. And then the anemone will send the cannabinoid a little signal that says, I'm zinc deficient, I'm vitamin C deficient, I need magnesium, or some shit like that. The cannabinoid will rearrange its own chemical structure into a little synthesized version of what your cell is craving and insert itself into the membrane, which is why cannabis appears to work for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, that's called your endocannabinoid system, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody wants to make something like that illegal. Does that sound sane to you? Or does that sound like a perfect scheme for somebody who's a psychopathic control freak who doesn't want people to have any kind of independence ever again?
Right. All the money is in illness. It's not in life or death. It's in illness. That's where all the money is, and that's where all the control is. And we become much more easy to control as well when our endocannabinoid system is starved.
The
We don't
Māori
even know
people
it
have a
exists.
saying.
We don't
The
even
Māori
know
people
it
in New
exists.
Zealand have a saying. If you're talking about what's important in society, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It means it is people, it is people, it is people.
There you go. There you go. So this is what I'm interested in, and this is what I want to really start bringing to people's awareness, because nobody knows about this, right? So anyway, the situation in the United States, such as I've come to understand it, is that there are 8 states in our country wherein it is, in some way, at some level, legal, if you want to call it that. The DEA is after us all the time. The DEA doesn't like this situation at all. But again, now I'm wondering, what game are we actually caught in here? Because if there is a big Soros-driven push to legalize GMO marijuana, then what the hell does the DEA care? Is this just a game? Is this just cops and robbers for a while? I mean, what is that, you guys?
I'd like to see the Canadian version called the DEA.
I think it's funny because I spent 10 years in Maine. And we have a lot of Canadians there. But Maine is a really good example. It's legal there. It barely, medical marijuana has been okay in Maine for a while, but it just went to a sort of referendum, and 51% or something of Mainers voted to legalize recreational marijuana. But the governor there is dragging his heels on signing it into law, something like that. And the growers there didn't want it. They were so torn, because if you legalize recreational, then they've got the big growers from California and Colorado coming in and setting up shop. Do you know what I mean? To make some dough. There's just a lot going on there. But then it's also legal in Massachusetts. But the laws in Maine and the laws in Massachusetts, it's like, even in a medicinal way, it's not reciprocal. So you can get in trouble the minute you set foot into Mass or Maine, or, do you know what I mean? It's all extraordinarily confusing. I believe in states' rights. I believe in the sovereign states. I wish the federal government would just go to hell and we could have 50 little countries like we used to have. Okay, it's much easier to control life that way, to sort of organize human rights, and it's just easier for people to get their brains around a smaller territory, unless of course you live in California, which is being balkanized anyway and divided into parts, right, Terry? But forget where I was going with that, except to say that it would be nice if there was some kind of across the board dependable understanding of what's okay and what's not okay. They keep us in a constant state of confusion, so that even, like Terry said, in California, if it's legal, you can still get big trouble anytime. And
the main threat is this: an informed and well-organized resistance. Okay, so if you confuse people all the time,
there you
it's
go.
going to be very difficult to organize around that, and it's also going to be very difficult to be informed about what they're saying, and the other thing. Like, a naturopath told me a joke the other day. What's the difference between a medical doctor and a god?
What?
A god realizes they're not a medical doctor.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the brainwashing. They put them through medical school and internship and residency in the way that they do for a reason.
But
so they
what's
can wash
interesting
out
though
the brain.
is you touched on the main thing there, brainwashing. Okay,
Yeah.
this is how you get people to believe a lie en masse. It's actually much easier to mind control a group of people than it is to mind control one person.
Mm-hmm.
That's what what all those experiments were about with the CIA and MK Ultra. They're trying to figure out how we made us tick to try and neutralize us without even having us alone in a room.
Speaking of which, I'm just going to throw this in there, you guys, and I don't know the veracity. I have to check this, but I did watch a video of one of the more prominent mind control survivors. There was Roseanne Barr's out there now for whatever reason talking about it, which is great. I can't remember the name of the woman. It will come to me.
Is it Kathy O'Brien?
Yes, thank you, darling. It was her. And she said that MK Ultra people who are heavily MK Ultra are trained to actually commit suicide if they smoke marijuana. That there's a suicide button attached to marijuana use because marijuana repairs their endocannabinoid system and makes them far less easy to control. And I wonder if that's true. I mean, it seems like it certainly could be true.
Well, they do say that. Yeah. I mean, I think that is probably what's most threatening about marijuana. And maybe that's, I'm just guessing, but maybe that's the reason why they want to GMO it or they want to control it. Because, again, it's about controlling our mind or controlling our consciousness. And I have to admit, that's one thing that really shifted in me was after I started smoking it, I felt my changing. And one time I had 2 big, huge pot brownies with like an eighth in each one that my friend made me. And I completely had a vision. It opened me up, and I swear I got it. I was like, in that moment, I was like, I was never the same after that.
Right.
Never.
And this is the moment that they make fun of.
Right. But it happened.
Right.
And I walked, everything was different.
It's
I walked a different path after that. It changed my life.
It's called
That's
the
how
Keanu
powerful it
Reeves
is.
moment. Whoa.
What?
It's called the Keanu Reeves moment. Whoa.
It was a total, it was totally.
And by the way, you guys, those of you out there who are watching this, I have to say that I used to smoke. Of course, I grew up in New Mexico in the 60s and 70s. Everybody had a trunk full of stuff that came across the border from Mexico. That's just what it was, dudes. That's just what it was. And so we all grew up with it. That's just what it was. But I don't smoke. It's just not on my agenda. I haven't since I was about 15, but I am extraordinarily pro cannabis because it makes sense. Okay. So in case you think you're talking to somebody right now. I've got 3 grown kids and it just makes sense. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think that a lot of us are coming to that point. I mean, there's a lot of people now that are becoming more educated. You're finding out information. You're finding about how, what it does to the body. I mean, I didn't know these things. I was a person I was a late marijuana smoker. And even when I did, I was just whatever. I smoked it at a party if I saw it or somebody was around, but it wasn't something that I got for myself. For many years. It wasn't until I started to do a marijuana themed show, and I got involved in the culture and what was happening in California and the fight for the dispensaries to be open. That's when I first got my first eye opening of what was going and how the politics around it were happening. So in a way, I was sort of having this experience with marijuana at the same time, realizing what it was happening to me on a psychic and spiritual level and just an overall opening, a deprogramming. Because again, another thing I do think happens to people is it, like for MK Ultra people, is it deprograms them. And so then they're able to get out of that, what their prison is. Yeah. But I can see where, deprogramming you and then programming you into what their program would be possible too.
Yes, it's all possible. Right? They've got it down to a science, man.
That theory too, and how it could go backwards. And I think marijuana was used in MK Ultra mind control experiments as well. And then they, went into LSD
because it probably wasn't what they were after.
Marijuana mimics LSD. It's in the same family of hallucinogens.
Right.
So it can be taken. I mean, like again, I had an extraordinary amount of it, and I was not a novice smoker, so I went through the roof, but you can go into a place where you're not in this reality on cannabis if you have enough of it. That is that. I mean, like
I
mushroom.
actually,
Beyond
I
mushroom.
got there only once. I had my
Huh?
bean bag on top of my double bed, and I was sitting on it, and I was so high, like literally gravity stopped for a second, and I was on top of it, like, whoa, like I felt like I was off the surface of the earth. Just couldn't feel it.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah. I mean, actually,
It's
that
true.
fits right into one
You
of
can,
that fits into
I,
right into one of my topics I talk about all the time, right, Terry? Getting
uh-huh.
our own power back, our actual magic. We're magical creatures and we have all kinds of power. And job one is to keep the amnesia going and keep us powerless. And this is one of the best ways to do it. One of the reasons I started getting back on this track myself as well, that I forgot to say a minute ago, was that I was really getting tired. I've raised 3 children. I was getting tired of watching drunk children die, and children who were high. And I'm not kidding about that. Children who are smoking weed are just having a good time. They're just, you know what I mean? They're not driving cars into telephone poles. They're not. Alcohol, by the way, is one of the ways the so-called Illuminati, they don't call themselves that, by the way, guys. They laugh at us when we use that term.
What do
That's
they?
not actually
What do they
true.
I
call
don't know
themselves?
what they call
I
themselves.
could share screen with you right now with a
Right?
letter that was sent to a friend of mine who's a Freemason, the Order of the Illuminati, signed by the Grand Master and everything. So
Yeah.
there is a sect that does call themselves
There
the
is
Illuminati.
a sect. Okay. Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
Okay.
But alcohol is alcohol is what they use. Alcohol is what they use
Yes.
on us
Yeah.
to mess us up.
Yeah.
And think about that as well. You've got the religions as well. And what's the sacrament for Christianity?
Yeah, wine.
Wine.
Alcohol. Okay. Well, wait. Hold on a second. I thought that turns it into a mind control cult. Exactly.
Exactly. And that means that bit that we always hear, turning water into wine. What the hell was that moment about then? What was that?
That was actually Pythagoras. He invented a jug that had an air hole in it so that you could actually fill the jug from 2 separate angles. And then when
Yeah.
you put the air hole or then release it, it would release either water or wine out of it. It was actually one of his favorite tricks. Jesus was educated in Egypt, and that's
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. I was waiting for a Vinny joke here. I was like, what's
no,
going to happen
So
now?
I mean,
in my
so what you're
Ralph
saying is like
Ellison.
Jesus was like kind of a side, like he knew how to entertain everybody. Hey, everybody, let me do a trick for you: water to wine. Oh, and then they would go, yay! And then he would do the machete and the apple, and they would all sit around and.
Exactly. So magic is basically science that you don't understand, right?
Well, that's what somebody
And,
said to me not too long ago. I was doing a Fey lecture, like an invitation-only Fey lecture, which is now coming out as a DVD. Sidebar and shameless self-promotion. Thank you. Anyway, I was doing this on a Zoom thing. I invited some people to hear it. And it was like they could hear me, they could see me, but I couldn't hear them or see them. But we had a chat room thing going here. And somebody said, because I talk about magic all the time, I'd be scared to come on Vinny's show and talk about the Fae, Terry, because he would just rip me a new one. But in the chat room, this guy was like, well, magic is just science we don't understand. And I said, don't say that. They're 2 different things. 2 different things. Okay. Anyway, on we go with probably going to get it now from Vinny. But so what else do we want to talk about, gang? Or are we good for now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask me? Is that for me?
All of you. What do you want to say about this?
About this?
Yeah, what do you want to say about the subject at hand? Cannabis, the endocannabinoid system, legalization, the game they're playing, George Soros and his goddamn GMO experiments that are now being turned loose.
I was still on the magic thing. I was like,
oh
what
yeah.
We
have 3 shows.
What do I feel about that? Do you believe in magic? Tere Joyce's Cara.
I'm going to send Vinny a copy of the DVD so he can listen to it and go, what? Anyway.
I'm thinking I might turn some water into wine.
Okay.
All
So
right.
let's get real.
What are you thinking about cannabis?
Yeah.
Well, she can teach you a lot of things. So if you start to learn about it and how it applies to us and the planet, then she will lead you to why and who are the people who are taking it away from us.
Yeah.
Whatever they call themselves.
Right. Right.
Right.
And huge.
That's it's like part of relief, like freeing her and giving it back to us, and the planet is part of it. It's intertwined with us dealing with who they are. But we have to wake up and realize what's going on, because maybe if we can do that, we might be able to like reboot ourselves and get it right.
That's the thing. This is one of the answers to the question. Jesus, there are billions of us and like 5 of them. What is the problem? The problem is
because we're mind controlled.
Well, they've disconnected us
take a bong hit.
They've disconnected us from our endocannabinoid system. I seriously think it's that important. That's how they're getting away with this, in my view. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I got a saying to chuck in here that some people shouldn't smoke weed, just like some people shouldn't drink. But fortunately, I'm neither of those people.
Right. Right. And that doesn't mean you can't take the oils. Well, I know I stepped on your joke there.
Speaking of which, right after the election, this pro-cannabis election, like the day or two after, then the police busted all these people in New Zealand called green fairies who were growing high CBD, low THC cannabis and specifically it out to all these sick people, right? They took in an estimated 2,500 patients these people were supplying, just 3 or 4 people, I think, these green fairies, and they busted them right after the election. This was a hot button issue because they didn't want the government getting heat or anything like that about the issue during the election. Right? So,
sorry.
Okay. This is
did you hear what he said, though? Tere, did you hear what he called them? I'm sorry, I can't hear you guys. The dogs, idiot dog. Stop. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen at some point.
Oh, well, it happens.
Vinny, yes. What were you saying, darling? Green fairies.
Okay, the green fairies are kind of like an antioxidant. What an antioxidant does is it will approach an unhealthy cell and it will donate electrons to it after it's been ravaged by a free radical. Now, when you think about this in the meta sense, you've got psychopaths running society. And they are the free radicals. They rob energy. They rob electrons from otherwise healthy cells, otherwise healthy minds and people. And the activists are the antioxidants who donate their electrons, their energy, to help restore these other cells to good health, right? We're trying to systematically heal the planet. I believe that we're a meta version of a healing system that's operating to heal the planet. Now, what's problematic about this, though, is that if, you're some kind of cell structure, what does that mean in your place with the greater universe? And I'm starting to wonder whether or not it even matters, because I'm quite satisfied, in fact, that I have justified my own existence via my actions alone. Okay, are you doing good in the world? Is what you're doing meaningful? Does what you do actually matter? Why, yes, it does. You've justified your own existence then. Yep. Nobody else can justify your existence. Only you can. Right? And I think that's the main lesson to really take away, whether you're an activist in cannabis or truth or whatever, that only you can justify your own existence by asking yourself this question: is what I'm doing right?
You know what? First of all, did you hear what he called them, Tere? He called them green fairies.
Oh, green fairies.
Fairies. Okay.
Oh.
Second of all, I can't end the show in a better way than that. That was freaking amazing, Vinny. There's nothing that we can say now that will be better than that. And it's
I get that a lot.
Absolute truth. So let's just end this particular episode of what I assume will probably be the ongoing conversation the cannabis conversation with two of the best people I know to talk about this with, for sure. And maybe next time I'll get up at dawn's early crack, as somebody I know used to say, and you guys can cop a break a little bit, right? Because I'm an early to bed kind of girl, believe me, and so's, I think Vinny is an early to bed kind of guy. So, and of course Tere's there at midnight, so that makes her between space and time.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, guys, so it was a fantastic interview. Unless there's anything else you want to say, I'm going to wrap up this one. It'll be out very soon. Absolutely. I don't do a lot of editing. I just put them out, babes. Okay? And thank you so much. Amazing. It was great. All right, go to bed. Go to bed.
TiffanyEastwoodShow.com.
Yes. Oh, what do you want? No. He's right, though. He's right. Plug your stuff right now. Vinny's got VinnyEastwood.com. Vinny's got a Patreon. I also have a Patreon, so I know how absolutely important that is to our survival. Tere, what do you got going?
I'm on American Freedom Radio twice a week. I got my YouTube channel and Truth Cat Radio, and you can find me on Facebook at Tere Joyce, Tere Joyce. I'm on Twitter at Tere Joyce, and I do a lot of social media.
Absolutely. And that's where you can find me too. I'm extremely reachable on Facebook. Thanks, guys. You're wonderful. I'll see you soon. Go to bed. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.